Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. As you can see, my name is Maarten van Leest and I work for the Flemish Public Sector Innovation Network. For the people who might not know this, Flemish means from Flanders, and Flanders is one of the 3 regions in Belgium. Our network started about a year ago, and when we started, the first thing we did was talk to a lot of people, a lot of colleagues within and around our government to get an idea which kind of issues we should tackle and what was needed of our network. A lot of interviews, a lot of colleagues, and among these also some innovation teams, some people who've been doing this now for a few months, others who've been doing it now for a few years. And we thought it might be interesting to have them talk to each other about their views and their problems and their successes, etc. And that's more or less what we're planning to do in the coming hour or so. Of course, I'd like to encourage you to join in and ask questions in the chat for us to ask the experts. And I'll first quickly introduce the experts or the speakers in random order. From the city of Ghent, which incidentally is the city I live in and the most beautiful city in both Belgium and Netherlands, we have Tom van Nieuwenhoven. From our big brothers and sisters in the Belgian federal government, Laurien Meus has joined us. From the Flemish government, we have Martin Rubens, who is accidentally also my boss. And a bit further north from my homeland of the Netherlands, both Frits Bussemaker and Patricia Itzinger are joining us.
Good morning.
So now you know who you're looking at. Let's start this conversation. I propose we start at the beginning. Why don't you guys tell me why you started your respective networks? Was there a specific point in time or a concrete event that made you start? Who wants to begin?
Shall we? Maybe?
Yeah.
So the Dutch Government's Innovation Community, or RIC as we call it in the Netherlands, so I'll keep it to RIC for today, was set up a couple of years ago with the observation then when a couple of civil servants were visiting the same conference in the States, but they were not aware that they were both visiting the same conference. So they got into a discussion and realized that there were all these islands of innovation within the Dutch government. So just the fact that we're both traveling to the States for this conference gave the sense of, hey, we're actually wasting some time. It would be better if we start to share our knowledge, make better use of our resources. So that observation started a thinking process of, hey, we need to connect and collaborate. And that resulted in setting up the Dutch Government's Innovation Center by just connecting innovators to each other and get them to listen to each other, share best practices. And that's on all levels of innovation, from technical innovation to societal innovation, but also a discussion on how to get people connected. Because one of the things we've discovered in getting people connected is you really need to focus people on what do we have in common rather what sets us apart. So it's that shift in thinking which needs to be done before we can actually start to share innovation together.
Yeah. And what we also noticed is that if you want to innovate, it doesn't always go how you plan it. So if you have an idea, it never goes exactly how you want it to go. So you have mistakes, you have failures, you have things can go wrong. And we noticed that if you talk with each other, all these innovators together, also about these failures, about these things that were difficult, that makes an innovation so much better. You can help your colleague by preventing them from these mistakes and doing it better.
I want to add something to that. I think broadly, I'm busy with innovation. 1.5 years ago, I was exploring innovation here in my office at home during the COVID times. So I made some conclusion. The first conclusion was, oh, okay, we are quite innovative already. So from a positive perspective, I thought that's okay. But negatively, and that's the same story as Fritz tells us, and Patricia tells us, we are all working in our own silos. And I think to strengthen innovation power, you need to come together and connect more. So breaking down the silos is very important, and creating a space where different disciplines can meet each other. So and that time I also had to give an advice for the policy program of innovation, and I suggested to start with an open innovation network, starting small and grow bigger and bigger, surely first internally and then more externally. So that was my concrete thing to say, okay, we need to start this innovation network.
About network innovation, it's the first year that NIDO, the Innovation Lab for Public Sector, powered by the Federal Public Service Policy and Support. It's the first year that we have been hosting network innovation. Network innovation started in 2019, and it was an initiative of an innovation officer within the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Home Affairs. And we joined the meeting from the very beginning, and the setup at that time was there was a rotating hosting system where each member would be would host a gathering in his or her organization and tell about the ongoing innovation projects. And as an innovation lab, we noticed there were still a lot of misconceptions about innovation. Like, for example, we heard people saying, innovation is very expensive and we don't have a lot of budget. Or on the other hand, we also heard people saying, oh, if we put a robot at our main reception, that would be a great step forward in our mission to innovate. And we thought, is that the right mindset? We also noticed that there was not enough know-how about the innovation process. And there were different opinions about what is innovation. So we thought, let's get this to a higher level. Let's share our knowledge. NIDO has been building up a lot of services. We have done a lot of research. Let's share our approach. Let's get the basics right. So that is why we took over the network, because there was also a need of a facilitator. And so we saw it as an opportunity to to bring it to a higher level.
Okay, when I hear you, I hear a more bottom-up approach in the start of your innovation network in Flanders. What was rather the way around, because it was we started in September last year as a result of a bureaucratic, very classical decision-making process, top-down, in the Flemish government. Maybe could explain a little bit. 2 years ago, the new Flemish government decided to make an organizational reform in the Flemish public administration, and 2 departments were merged, and I was Secretary General of one of them, and they asked me to start a new project. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to formulate a project proposal in which I gathered the experience and the information and the ideas I noticed during my former work. And I agree fully that there is a great need in connecting people who have innovative ideas and to push the boundaries of the different silos that we have in our public administration. So that was the main objective in my project proposal, and the Flemish government fully agreed with it, and so we could start with a little team of 3 members in September last year. And but we are fully aware that even though we have the luxury of a top-down mandate of the government, that this is not sufficient to start a network and to keep it alive. You have to constantly being in touch with the needs and the opportunities of the members of the network. And I think you have continuously reinvent yourself as a network to be able to be in line with the needs and the opportunities of the members.
Martin, if I may react on that, because you've mentioned something interesting, a top-down mandate. And that's, I think, also one of the struggle. It's not necessarily a struggle, but it's a discussion we have. To what extent you really need that top-down mandate? Because we originally started from a very much a grassroots approach, getting the innovators connected. So be a little bit cheeky, being a little bit outside of the box. Because the minute we realized that it became a top-down mandated initiative, you lose the characteristics of what the community is trying to do, and then you get contained in a box again. So I don't know, I'm just curious on your experience, and maybe Tom can share what he feels on that.
Yeah, that's true. I fully agree, because although we have an official mandate, we have started our network not by putting our activities into the political spotlight or in the spotlight of the top management of the Flemish public administration. No, we started, even though we have the official mandate, we started to get in contact with our grassroots, with our policy members who are creative, who are innovative, who are searching for to connect, and etc. So we transformed our official mandate into a more bottom-up approach.
I ask Martin a question. I was wondering if it's top down or bottom up, if it makes a difference if you want to get rid of all these silos Tom was talking about.
In my experience, as Secretary General, I was member of the top management of the Flemish public administration. I strive hard to get rid of these silos and those limitations, and I found it was not very successful. There was a lot of constraint and resistance against it, and I hope and I believe strongly that if we can sustain the policy members who wants to break down those silos, they can push the boundaries within their own entities, and they are more effective. It could be a more effective impact than go the other way around. So I hope that our network can have that impact.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the idea of, I'm interested in the idea of whether or not you should try to find the political spotlight. I understand that within Flanders, we kind of started in the spotlight, but we scurried away because we like it better in the shade. I'm interested to hear how our federal colleagues and the people from Ghent see that.
We just getting my thoughts clear. We do not actively involve our political stakeholders in this network, and that would be the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Public Administration. But we keep them in the loop by informing them about our activities, but we have a lot of freedom. But I think it's also because we focus on the how to innovate more than the what's. And I think it gives us a lot of freedom. So
Okay.
I think in Ghent it's more or less the same, but I can imagine that the best way is that you have grassroots initiatives and also a mandate, top-down political. So I think both is necessary. For us, the role we see us to have in this network is like we want to be a stage for innovation and our matchmakers. So connecting the dots is a good way of saying what we want to do. And the functions we do is connecting, showing, supporting, and learning. That's very important. And what we don't want to do is coordinating all the innovation, because otherwise it's going to be too big. And so we want to really to be a stage, create new opportunities, the being a catalyst.
Mhm.
And
That's-
for the joke, we think that there is plenty of space into the box, but first we have to use this space in the box. So that's the joke we all always share.
Tom, you're so right, because there's a very big threat if you try to take that top-down approach by actually stimulating innovation. You actually become a threat to all the other innovation centers, because they're quite concerned, hey, are you now going to compete with my initiative? So you have to be very focused on, no, I'm just connecting the dots. I am indeed a catalyst. I think that's the best word to describe what, at least what Rick is doing in the Netherlands. So you take initiatives.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
have to be
And
very careful.
yeah, and innovation is always about and taking the space and taking the time. I think that's the best way to to define innovation. Bringing people together, take the space and time for doing it.
Yeah, and you have to realize that setting up a community, at least in the Netherlands, is an innovation in itself.
That's true.
But I think for us, there is, or for me, there is a difference between a network and a community. I have already a lot of experience with networks and communities, and I can tell network innovation is still a network. People, they don't know each other very well, or not at all. And in community, you have a mutual identity, a mutual goal, mutual mission, and just innovating the public sector, I think it's too high level to make it really a community. Therefore, for us, network innovation, if we really want to play the role of knowledge broker at this stage, but hopefully in the future we can evolve to more like a matchmaker role, and match civil servants with a similar challenge with each other, so they can tackle it together. But I think we're not there yet.
Maureen, if I hear you say about these differences between network and community, I totally agree. And I experienced that the community we run, that people are so committed, and not, of course, we have a lot of members, or about 4,000 or something, but you have this group that's always there with webinars, but that's always also there when I need someone or some expertise, or I have in my own team someone who's sick. I can call someone from the network. I know now, okay, I can call this guy because he likes it to moderate a session or whatever. And that's when I know that it's not only about innovation, it's also about connecting with people, and that's what Frits and I did the last couple of years. Really try to bond with all these innovators. Not only about innovation, but also take the time. Who are you? What's your role? Being seen. How can I help you? And now we get this all back, and that's community. I think if you talk about do's and don'ts,
Yes.
drink a lot of coffee with your community members. That always,
Yeah, it's true.
Coffee.
And it's one of the struggles, I think, certainly with all the pandemic and everything is online, and the network is expanding, but how do you drink coffee together? And that's where we saw that our colleagues from INO, they organize speed dates, and we think it's a very great initiative for really get to know each other.
Yeah.
That's true. We invest a lot now at the start of our network in making giving opportunities to connect people, to get to learn each other. So that's our role as a matchmaker. But there is also a point that's very intriguing me. If and I want to know how the others look at that. Is at a certain point we are three of us as the core team of the network. Is that sufficient enough to get this network alive, or do we have to invest in more like a shared ownership within the network? So maybe it's in the beginning. It's most people have a wait and see attitude because this is new initiative and they they look from outside what's going to happen with that network. So I'm very eager to hear about, is it possible to create a shared ownership in the network that is broader than the core team of 3 or 4 persons? So.
Martin, if I may answer that, I'm able to say that I've been at the foundation of a number of networks throughout the last 20 years. And the answer is very much yes. It starts because it starts with 1 or 2 people. And what I've experienced is you start asking questions. And one of the key questions I've noticed is important is, what do you have in common? How can you collaborate? Because the minute you start to explore what people have in common, it forces you to listen to what their needs are. But the minute that people start to share what they have in common, and that defines the common question of that community. And I think that's also where Laureen came in. That's the difference between being a network and being a community, by identifying that common quest and getting people intrinsically motivated to start to answer that question. The great thing is, in my experience, that don't give the answer, but keep on raising the question. Because over time, when you keep on raising the question, hey, how can we solve this? Everybody at the end of the day, in my experience, really wants to chip in and say, look, this would be my perspective on that. That's my experience. At the end of the day, if you keep on doing that consciously, you actually get rewarded for raising that question. But the trick is, the question needs to be unique. Because if you start a community on a topic where there are already 10 different other communities or 3 other communities, so hey, what's the added benefit of setting up the community? So trying to identify a unique question, that I think is a great way to start a community with just 2 or 3 people.
Okay.
What I did in the first meeting was ask all people who were there, what do you have to offer to the network or community, and then what do you expect? And I think that's a very good starting point, because it's not one direction. You want to engage each other in the network. So I think that's very important, that it's about learning. It's a good way, I think.
There's actually a question in the chat which is worthwhile to explore.
That's what I want to say, because I like the idea of asking questions. I like the idea of and not try to give the answers and be agile at that point. I also like the fact that we're such creative civil servants that our main takeaway is drink a lot of coffee. We're really thinking inside the box here now. But if you're that fluid, and I want to once again invite everyone to ask questions in the chat, because that makes our discussion more interesting. But if you're that fluid, if you're listening to your group and let them choose where to go, how difficult is it then to choose your objectives and to have a level of ambition and to measure that?
I think at the end of the day, the group decides in itself. So one of the things I see happening with communities is that the community activity gets mixed with, I'd say, organizing events. So there are certain metrics to organize events. Oh, I need to have at least 20, 50 people in a room, otherwise it's a success or not. Mm-hmm. In my definition, if the community just consists of 4 or 5 people and they find it valuable to spend their time on that community, on that particular exercise, I would say that would qualify the success. So the people themselves determine, I would like to spend my time on that particular activity, which we then call a community. Because at the end of the day, we are competing for time. It's free of charge to set up a community. Go to LinkedIn and you can be a member of thousands of communities out there. but you're going to get value if you spend time. So a success criteria for me, it would be, do you see people committed to spending their time on what they're doing? And if they feel that is valuable, then it's valuable.
I fully agree with this. I think there is a great pitfall that we like to measure our impact in terms of accountability and in quantitative measurements and numbers. I think the main objective of the network we set up is that we hope that the people in it are continuously learning something, that they develop their learning lens in order to experience a more innovative organization and innovative policy making role they have. So that's for me if they stop learning, we are not a good network, I think.
Yeah, and if you start to measure it as you would do with innovation, that seems like, hey, you have a particular innovation budget throughout the year. Hey, we're halfway through the year. So you're probably halfway through innovating. The thing about a community is we're facilitating serendipity to take place. You sometimes cannot predict when it's going to be really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have some basic KPIs, and we don't want to get too hung up on the KPIs like number of members, participants on the events. But we hope to be able to measure the success of this network by the number of challenges that are shared and launched by different public services. The number of experiments that are set up, because this is how innovation gets started, and that's where the real impact lies.
For us also, an innovation network is one of the actions amongst others to boost the innovation power and to boost the innovation space. It's like an action, an instrument to create this. And we don't have any other ambitions, but it's bringing people together and create a vivid network. I think that's the main objective. But you don't have to come to the network. If you're not interested, you don't have to. We don't know. You come because you want to connect and learn from each other. So we have to stay relevant for each other. So that's the main objective, I think. Yeah.
Okay. We got another question in from somewhere in the audience, which I like. It's how do the communities interact? How do we work together? Is it exchanging experience and knowledge or another way? For me, it's an interesting question because that's, as you can see, we very much like to connect with the other networks. That's why we do stuff like this. As Frits says, there are a lot of networks. If you start up LinkedIn, you can join a network. So everyone who wants to join our Flemish LinkedIn network, please just go to the internet. But on working together, especially with guys like us who are very close together, who are somewhat overlapping. Of course, we all need to be friends and we all need to talk to each other and stuff like that. But are there pitfalls? Are there things we really should do or really shouldn't do, you think?
Well, about working together in between communities, we have in Flanders, we have a dream to create, we call it a pool of innovators. With the aim of creating a network of innovators that are available to step into project of another policy domain of another entity than their own organization. So it's a pool of people who are ready to and are have the expertise to collaborate with other people in other entities and so to share their knowledge, to share their experience. But we don't know if this pool of innovators will function as we dream of it.
I also noticed if you are a community manager, as I am, I know a lot of other community managers, of course, because they're also working on innovation. So you meet each other that aren't the kind of people who want to keep it to themselves. So they all want to connect. They all want to work together, because if you're not doing that, you're not a community manager. So what I noticed that everyone with a community, everyone wants to work together. So I have to say, yes, we do. We share and we communicate with each other. It's not about being the best, or no, you always think, how can I help this other community? Because maybe sometime I need their help too. And Fritz, you agree, right? All social people.
But I think it's also a personal mindset from a community manager perspective.
Yeah.
I would qualify myself as a pathological connector. I cannot stop connecting.
That's true.
Yeah. But so that's a mindset, but it's also a mindset based on the observation that once you do that, so not just connecting yourself to a lot of people, which is much more in the networking space, but facilitating other people to get connected to each other. And that means you have to listen, hey, what are your issues? Over time, because it is something which happens over time, you more or less get to be recognized as a central point where people will come up to you and say, can you please help me with this? And would you know somebody who can do that? And by continuously and consciously connecting people to each other, you start to share knowledge. I don't know if this actually helps answer the question which Femke has, because this is about the principle. It's also about, pure the basics. I mean, this is just getting together over a cup of coffee, which Patricia very much likes to do. Just talking to people, is setting up a Zoom call like this, just chatting. This is knowledge sharing. And I think also one of the points I'd like to make is, in our experience, this is coming back to the Rijksinnovatie community. It was initially set up for just members of the Dutch central government. So it was a closed community. So it was more or less like a contradiction in terms, because in my mindset, if you go for a connect and collaborate world, don't create your own silo. So we realize we need to be open. Now, we need to be transparent. Now, that does not mean you have to be naive. You should not share everything, but the mindset is be findable, be accessible. So once people recognize that, hey, that's who you are, and you are a node in the network where people can find you, you've moved from the push situation where you actually proactively have to connect to people to a situation where people will come to you and say, hey, can you help me with my connections? And if you do that by just giving it away, you will be rewarded from both sides.
Yeah, I get some reaction about the coffee drinking. It's not that I'm drinking coffee all day long. Sorry, also in the chat, but it was more about seeing someone. And by example, I know this guy, he's very good. He has all these innovation ideas, very hardworking, but also his mother is sick. So if I see him, I ask him, how's your mother? And then we talk about that for 5 minutes, and then we go on. That's about the connection that I mean, you work with people, and that's important in a community.
I want to really much emphasize that. That's so important. Don't treat people as functions, treat people as humans.
Yeah.
Because the minute you find somebody, connect to somebody on a personal level.
I love coffee. Yeah.
And I love coffee too, is he?
Cake, Femke.
Agree?
Let's meet.
Well, she's around the corner. She's in Amsterdam, so that's it. Easy for you. But the minute you start to connect people on a personal level, you'd almost have a friend for life, because you realize you can make a connection, which is going to be very, very important.
Okay, but also in the chat, but also something that's in my mind. I like this idea. I hate coffee, but I drink tea, so that also works. But I realize the connecting is important, but it is a bit of letdown if it stops there. for me, it feels like you want to take it a step further and do experiments together. Maybe that's when your network becomes a community. I think that's a difficult step to take. How do you grease that, other than having a shitload of money and throwing it around?
Can I first add something on the coffee part? I think there are two small questions who are very important. Everybody should ask them. If you are in a meeting, in a community, and you ask yourself, present yourself, and put two questions. Dare to share. What do you want to share in this group? And dare to ask. Two small questions. But the energy in the group grows. It's wow. And for sure, this is because of COVID, because when we are in real meetings, everybody likes it. But if you start with those two questions, the connections are growing. Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. So that's something very important, together with coffee, for sure.
Hey, it's not about the coffee at the end of the day. There are questions in the chat which actually have the same category. When you have lack of resources or time is expensive. Both Andrea and Marge, you have more or less the same type of questions. And there is very much a pushback from senior management because they are scared that this is happening. Because at least if you look at in our perspective, we are collaborating across silos, across borders, and getting people connected to each other. You do sometimes see a sense of this is in competition with the formal structure of the organization. They lose control. And it does take some effort to explain that to them, that it does have benefit to the organization as a whole. So get out of your silo. But it's a chat.
I fully agree. I worked for more than 10 years as a member of the senior management, top management of Flemish public administration, and that's a threat I feel there. They're not eager to push the boundaries and to get out of their silo because of many reasons and many understandable reasons also. So I think it's I believe very strongly, as I said, in the strength of working bottom up. I believe very strongly that policy members who are fully working in an innovative project can push the boundaries inside the organization and to shift the mind of the top management, of the senior management in their own organization. If they can show it is working, it is getting results, it has an impact, it is another way of doing things, but it's not strange, and it can work. So let's do it, and then the senior management will shift their mind and go think another way.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to observe that we very much talk about us and them when it comes to senior management, and there's a lot of senior management also who are innovators. I think that's also the trick when setting up communities. A lot of the innovators are, I would say, more lower in the organization. But the minute you set up a community, I would urge that the community manager make certain that everybody within that community is going to be treated on equal level. So it doesn't matter if you are a senior manager or just a new junior policy advisor. You are all part of the same community, and you should be judged, in my perspective, on what you contribute to the community within the community, and that the role you have on another playing field is not that relevant. So judged on the content you provide rather than the hierarchical position you have in another situation. Mm-hmm. Because the minute you take that approach, you can actually also start to invite more senior people where time is more pressure to be part of that community. Can you actually offer something to the community?
I'd like to go to the chat again. There's a question from Andrea Erdai. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. It's something that Martin already kind of touched upon within the Flemish government about the deployment of people across organization based on their skills. Is it possible for if within an innovation community or within any community, we think we need someone with this skill and department X or Y has it, that you borrow them? I know that, as Martin said, within Flanders, we have the dream of the pool of innovators, which would be something like that. I think the federal people have something like that as well with the talents exchange
Talent
project.
exchanges, yes, yes, but it's only on federal level. So
Yeah, okay, but
there are organizations that exchange talents by this program, but unfortunately, there is a limit to the federal organization. And yeah, I think if we're talking about connecting communities, and if we look at the complexity of our Belgian states, there is a real challenge, yeah, we should exchange talents over political authority levels. Then that would
okay,
be a greater dream.
Very ambitious.
Yes, it's very ambitious. But why not if we think about tackling challenges together with across political levels, authority levels? That is necessary, I think. Yes.
Yeah. And we have better coffee than you guys, so that might also be a good thing.
You're right.
And Ghent and Netherlands, do you have something like that?
We don't have this kind of approach, but what I think is important, and I agree totally, that if you work on innovation, you have also to work on diversity. So the casting of people working on issues should be from different perspectives. I think that's very, very important. But also, as a government, as an open government, we want to be. We have to use all the knowledge, all the means from different partners, not only in our administration, but also entrepreneurs, also students, also researchers, also other people, citizens also. So I think that's our it's very important to work together with all those people, I think, if you want to be innovative. So I think quadruple helix work together is very, very important, working together with all those actors. I think that's
so the network that you're hosting, Tom, that is you invite all these stakeholders?
Not yet. We start internally, and from internal services towards civil servants who work for policy departments. And I think we want to grow, but we have our tangles also to entrepreneurs. I'm also a bridge towards students and researchers, and we have also a very big agency around participations with citizens. So we try to network those elements also. Yeah, for sure, it's important.
That's true. In Flanders also, we want to be a very open network and open to anyone who is interested in a more innovative way of governing. And so we are open for local servants, also civil servants, for civil organizations, for the private sector, for academic institutes. But in this openness, there is a tricky point, I think. Maybe I want to know how the others think about it. A few months ago, we set up a workshop with about 30 persons, and we were very pleased to see that there was a great diversity of different policy domains that were attending this workshop. was also a nice balance of men and women. But when we looked around our digital table, we saw only white people. So that is still a problem, still a blind spot in our organizations, that we do not attract easily enough people from foreign origin, of persons with disabilities. And I'm eager to know how the others are tackling this problem, because we started now setting up interviews with different minority organizations in Flanders to hear how could we connect with our network with those minority, those people, and because we think that it's important to also incorporate their wisdom in our network. So how do you tackle this problem?
It's very difficult, Martin. Our RIC bureau is only 4 people. So if I organize a webinar once a week or once in 2 weeks, we get speakers from different ministries, and we ask them to organize this webinar, and we support them. And a lot of the times when they introduce their presentation, I look at 4 white male, about 50 years old, and I feel the responsibility from the RIC to notice it, to say it, and talk about it. How can we change this? And then we ask them to look around. Is there a colleague? Is there someone else? That's what we can do. And I still feel it's not enough, but it's a start. What I do like at the Dutch government is that they don't only hire people because of their backgrounds, like what study they did, but also look at the skills they have. Like I have skills from I come from a child youth organization. I worked there for 20 years. I have nothing with innovation, and still I am running this innovation community. So that's only because they saw, okay, this woman has social skills, and we need that. It's not important. So that's what's going well. But the diversity, it's we have to talk about it, stay open about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I never thought about it. Is there enough diversity in our network? I'm more thinking. Are the different organizations all represented in our network, and do we attract academics, and do we get a good mix there? We don't allow companies in our network. We don't allow civil servants in our network. That is a choice at this stage. Maybe that can evolve in the future. But yeah, Martin, I don't have an answer for your question.
I think this is a challenge for a lot of organizations. I think also for the city of Ghent. But I want to mix the idea that innovation without diversity can't happen. I mean, diversity itself is very important for innovation to be relevant. Also, what you do as a city. What we believe is that everybody innovates. So that's our idea in the city of Ghent. Everybody, also somebody who's working in the streets and on the green and can have a new idea. So I think that's very important, that innovation is not like only for staff people and stuff like that, but for everybody in the city. So I think that's one way of putting more diversity into this team, perhaps.
Tom, I agree that's a good approach, but I also want to point out and emphasize what Patricia said. You can create criteria that when you organize an event, at least make certain it's inclusive and diverse. On the other hand, you also have to be careful, I believe, that you take on the responsibility for lack of diversity because you want to organize a discussion. This is a much bigger issue than just your own local community. So you do your bit to make it diverse, And we've had great, give an example of the crown, one of the princes in the Netherlands, Constantine, who is quite well known in as a spokesperson for the startup community. So he's a well thought after speaker on events. The minute you ask him, can you come to an event? He says, yes, I'm happy to come on the one condition. At least 50% of the people in my panel speakers need to be women. Otherwise, I'm not coming. And that's a great example we can set to do our part. But we have to realize this is a much, much bigger issue than we as innovation communities can solve. Yeah,
for sure. Thanks.
I like very much the remark in the chat, don't stay in the office to seek for representation.
Go to the supermarket.
Yeah, okay, but doesn't that also, you can't keep doing that. You can't keep trying to, you need something of a base to have the discussion about. I think it's difficult to find the right balance there on staying in your Zoom meeting with experts and going outside and finding other voices. Yep.
Was that a question? Sorry.
No, not really. Not everything I say has to be a question. Come on now. I do have another question. Daniel Leppert, who sadly already left the meeting, but he did have an interesting and kind of a naughty question. He said, when would you give up on a network or feel you should reinvent it? And between brackets, maybe one that you started rather recently. I don't know if that's a jab at us, but let's hope not. But how about that? Is there a way of thinking in place of saying, hey, listen, what we're doing, it was nice, but it's not needed anymore, or we really need to refocus our energies?
Oh, it's the toughest thing to do, because that basically admitting you're going to die one day.
Thank you for keeping the discussion light.
But also I like the idea that we stop within 3 years, we stop and we do something else. I like the idea.
Yeah. Now, to give, if you look at what we're doing within the Dutch community, we have sub-communities. And this is very much a personal take on this, but you need to be relevant. If at a certain point you feel we're not relevant anymore, we're wasting people's time, please stop. So then you stop the community because it's died. We've also had experiences where we support communities to be formed, but they become so successful that you actually allow them to be independent of your own community. Say, well, hey, you've grown, you've matured, so we don't need to support you anymore. It's just like a parent saying you're fried, hey, you've grown up, go out in the world. But I think the key question is what you're doing still relevant for its members? So if still 3, 4, 5 members agree, yes, we really want to come together and discuss, explore something, then for them it's relevant.
No.
But if you then decide, hey, it's not relevant, when nobody wants to pick up organizing an event, be realistic. Stop wasting people's time.
Yeah, I think it's about reinventing the network. I think the approach that we have this year, I think it will be different next year, and the year after that it will be also very different. But I can't look into the future, and but will there be a need to exchange on experiments, challenges, or yes, I think that will not go away. It's on how do you what can you give to the network, what kind of approach do you aim for?
That's true. I think we have to, this reinvention, we have to do it continuously. It's just something in our mindset that we have to be willing and to be daring to ask ourselves, are we still on the good track? Are we still in line with the needs and opportunities of our members? Do they learn something, what we do? And if they don't, and we have to stop.
Good. Guys, we've been talking now for about an hour. And the nice people from Creative Bureaucracy Festival gave us an hour. And just when I was saying that, an interesting question is coming in the idea of a creative bureaucrat network. I think that's more or less what this is. What I wanted to ask, and that's, I think, more a question to the audience than to our speakers. Do we want to wrap this up and go listen to someone else who's also very interesting? I don't really know who's behind us, but someone else who's also very interested in the festival, or do we want to keep the Zoom meeting going? If we do that, we'll just open it up for the audience and have, instead of just our 6 faces, have like 20 faces going on.
Yeah.
It's a question to the audience. If by show of hands or say something in the chat, do you want to keep chatting after our allotted time, or is this enough of the Benelux and do you want to do something else?
Are there any other network owners in the audience? That's my question.
We have to take a coffee break. That's nice. Yeah. Apparently that's all we talked about this hour. Okay, then I'd like to of course I'd like to thank the speakers, both from the Netherlands and from Belgium. I would very much like to thank the Creative Bureaucracy Festival and the audience, because your questions made this much wider and more interesting discussion than it could be. And of course, we hope that our networks are going to be so incredibly effective that we're going to see all of you in the next couple of months, years, whatever. Thank you, everybody, and have fun at the rest of the festival.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.